Welcome to Fresno CityVision. I'm Randy Reed. It's no secret that the city of Fresno is challenged by the issue of chronic homelessness. Throughout our city, people with no permanent place to live are camping in vacant lots, in public parks, in their cars, and elsewhere. Like other cities across the country, Fresno is looking for ways to deal with both the causes of homelessness as well as the impacts of a growing homeless population on our community. Unlike many cities, however, Fresno has the benefit of a full-time homeless prevention and policy manager specifically tasked with developing and implementing strategies to address homelessness issues. His name is Greg Barfield, and I'm pleased to welcome him to this edition of Fresno CityVision. Greg, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Randy.
Absolutely. Now, Greg, the position of Homeless Prevention and Policy Manager is a new one to the city of Fresno. It was established in 2009, January, I believe it was, when you came on board in that position.
Absolutely.
How did the position come about? What led up to the creation of this unique position?
Sometime the year prior to that, there had been a lot of discussion with the previous mayor and the city council about ways to go about ending chronic homelessness within our city. Through that, a 10-year plan was developed and a position was created to implement that particular plan.
Okay, and we're going to talk about the 10-year plan a little bit later in this discussion, but how common is a position like yours in other communities?
Oftentimes, there's not a direct point person. There may be one of the duties of a staff person may be to help implement this. Typically, though, I've seen maybe a half dozen of these positions throughout where there is a lead person dedicated solely to this position and solely to this effort.
Wow, you're talking about a half dozen people perhaps throughout the country in a position similar to yours?
Correct.
So it does sound very unique.
It is very unique.
Okay, I want to talk more about the role that you play, certainly. Quick statistics, though, before we move to that. How many homeless men, women, and children are we talking about that are living in the city of Fresno at the present time?
When we counted last January, we do what we call a point-in-time survey, and at that point there were 3,600 in the city of Fresno who were unsheltered. The downside to that figure is it does not include anyone who may have had housing the night prior or maybe doubled up staying with family or friends.
Okay, so the definition of housing, of homeless rather, may be a little broader than most people would interpret. I think most folks like myself would consider someone who's homeless to be someone who's living in a park or living in their car or living on a vacant lot. But you're saying that actual definition is a little more expansive.
It is. There is a category of what we call unsheltered. Those are the individuals who have no place to call their own, who you typically see as the more visible homeless. And then there are the sheltered homeless, no place that they call their own, and they typically may be in an emergency shelter, they could be in a transitional facility, or they could be in this day and age, a lot of us are doubled up with another family member or friend. Okay.
And is the perception that homelessness is growing, is that true? Is there actual factual basis for the perception that homelessness is getting larger?
We are clearly seeing an increase due to the economic downturn of visibly homeless individuals. Oftentimes that thread that is keeping a person in housing versus outside of housing is getting thinner and thinner. Many of our service providers, particularly the Poverello and some of the food commodities agencies, are seeing increases of working people who are making tough choices. You know, I've now had another 10 hours cut at the plant, or you know, maybe one of two wage earners is now you know, without a wage, and they are trying to make those very difficult decisions. Do we eat or do we continue to pay a bill? And with those decisions, oftentimes you end up you know, not being able to overcome all of the other obstacles out there.
So what you're saying is in many cases there are folks who have been working, have been productive in our society, paying their taxes, etc., but they are kind of scraping by from the standpoint of being able to afford a rent payment or to pay other bills that may be required of them, and so they're on that bubble, and when those dollars get stretched to the limit, they end up not being able to afford housing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And many of our schools really see the impact of this. When we had a large wave of foreclosures throughout the 2009, many of our schools were directly impacted by that, where through the return mail they were able to gather additional data as to, now John's not living here. Let's find out where John is. Well, now John's staying and his family is staying with another family member or friend somewhere else. Fresno Unified actually has over 2,000 homeless children in the district. And last year, Clovis Unified reported over 140 homeless individuals within the district. Now, those are people who have actually reached out for services.
Okay.
There may be more who have yet to reach out for services.
And talk about, again, definitions, because as I drive through Fresno, I don't see what appears to be 2,000 children living in parks or on vacant lots. So, again, this goes back to definitions.
With children, it's much easier for an individual to take in a child than it may be to take in a whole family, right? And many times what you see in the community is I'll take in, the kids because I just can't afford or don't want to see them on the streets. But at some time, maybe the adults or the parents have worn out their welcome, and they are the ones. Or because of the tension that's created when there's such an economic crush in your family, husbands and wives begin to split apart. Okay. And many times you end up seeing the husband out on the streets. That's the visible homeless individual that you end up seeing in many cases.
Okay.
And there's a lot of resources available, but not necessarily available to keep through the counseling aspect that needs to happen.
Okay, to keep families together and to keep them whole and sheltered. Let's